Welcome to Smut and Sensibility,
a podcast for romance readers and romance writers.
By romance readers and writers.
We are Amber,
Allie,
and Marie,
a group of learned ladies who love talking about the romance genre.
In this podcast, we will talk about our favorite books, writing craft, and how we make room for a creative life in real time.
So buckle up and enjoy the ride. Welcome back, everyone, to Smut and Sensibility.
Welcome.
A podcast. Welcome. A podcast for romance readers and romance writers by romance readers and writers. Thank you all for being here. And for all of you who have found us on social media and interacted, it's been really fun making a bunch of new book besties and just feeling seen and not yelling into the void every week. So that's really fun and exciting.
I didn't expect that to happen so soon.
So that's really, really fun. So just thank you for expected us to be in the void.
I expected to shout into the void a little bit longer than I think we have. So that's a lovely surprise. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes. And for those of you who are new, as a reminder, I'm Amber. I'm a corporate attorney by day and a romance reader and writer by night.
And I'm Allie. I'm a doctor, writer, and part-time student studying history at Oxford.
Yeah.
So
we're here. We're excited. First, we're going to start with our Book Nook segment. This is where we talk about our recent reads, book recommendations, and tell you a little bit about what we've been reading. So, Allie, do you want to get us started?
Yes, I do. And I will say today we are going to be, I don't know if we're actually going to be answering the question, do you need a platform to get a book deal? But I'm excited to have that conversation after Book Nook. So I read 4 Weekends and a Funeral by none other than Miss Ellie Palmer. She's beautiful. She's a signed copy. I got this from Tropes and Trifles.
I actually think I lent my copy to a friend, so pretend I'm holding mine. But I have
there. She is
too.
But yes, so this book is fantastic. This was Ellie's debut, and I think it was really, really well done. We are big Ellie fans over here, as you guys know. So this book is about Allison, and she just turned 30. She is post double mastectomy from being a BRCA1 carrier, and she did that preventative procedure. But she is a reluctant thrill seeker, and she arrives at her ex-boyfriend Sam's funeral to discover that no one knows that he dumped her. Oof. And so she agrees to play the grieving girlfriend over the holidays, just, for the sake of the family, try to keep everything normal for them. But little did she know that would mean packing up Sam's apartment with his prickly best friend, Adam Berg. It's going to take a couple of weekends to do this. Just 4, nothing to see here.
Perhaps 4 weekends.
Perhaps.
One might say.
4 weekends, perhaps, after the funeral. Adam doesn't want Allison anywhere near him. Forced to spend long hours with the grump and his monosyllabic demeanor, Allison decides to put her people-pleasing abilities to the test. She will make him like her, goddammit. And after awkward family affairs, snowy mishaps, and packing up dilemmas, the two of them form a tenuous friendship. Friendship means incredible chemistry and sexual tension, which is... in romance, that is the best type of friendship, wouldn't you say?
100%.
100%. Okay. So now the bigger question is, will this lie get in the way of her new unexpected romance? Like I said, I loved this romance. I thought that this was a very tender story. And I think that Ellie does a really, really good job talking about being faced with a health decision. And I think that a lot of times when we're talking about, health things, and particularly when we're talking about risk reducing surgeries like we have in this book, I think there is a tendency to intellectualize that procedure. That is a coping mechanism, right? But it also doesn't really take into account the emotional aspect of, having a mastectomy. And she did have reconstruction in the book. But that is not to say that breast is not without identity. It is a very significant identity bearing anatomy. And I think that Ellie did such a good job talking about some of the more real aspects of being a young woman going through these significant health decisions and navigating these decisions and being I don't have a partner. I don't know if I want to be a parent. I'm not in the position right now where I would want to be one, but I know that I need to make a decision about like what I want to do with my ovaries. Like there's just like a really significant burden of decision. And again, we were talking lately about the superpower of the genre. And I think that Ellie does such a good job navigating those kind of emotionally fraught decisions, but also like dealing with the identity piece. Like she does such a good job with the post-surgical identity and figuring out who you are and like what you want as far as your future with your relationship, your person, but also with who do you want to be? Because that's the thing is Allison was portraying herself or wanted to be this like outdoorsy adventure queen. But that's not really who she is. And so she's learning who she wants to be while she's also recovering from surgery, where she's also figuring out, what do I want to do with my life? What am I looking to achieve? What am I looking to accomplish? Who is that person that I see myself sharing my life with? And there's a lot of vulnerability there. And, that like post-surgical, like sexual encounter. And it was just very tender and it was very well done. And good job, Ellie. We love it.
Yeah.
So definitely recommend.
Ellie herself had the BRCA mutation.
Yeah.
I think that's when I was trying to pull the quote here. She was in Minneapolis Magazine recently, and she talked about how she started writing books in the first place because of her surgery. She had always wanted to, but it was while she was recovering and like making this big decision and doing this that she like family would joke at Thanksgiving, like, when's the book coming out? And when she was recovering, she only wanted happy endings. So
yeah,
she had no room for anything else in her life was the quote. So yeah, it's very nuanced and layered and beautifully done.
Yeah. I think that she did a really good job navigating like the nuance and the uncertainty. This is one I also did on audio, and I think it was Carissa Vacker that did the audio. And then this was my book trophy, because you guys know I like to do that.
And I think, did you get that at Tropes and Trifles when you came to visit?
Yeah, I
was there with you in person when we bought our signed copies from Ellie.
Yes,
so that was
and
very
Ellie
special.
Ellie was there herself.
We had a celebrity sighting.
It's very, very cute.
Well, celebrity for us bookish baddies.
Would recommend. All right, Amber, what do you got for me this week?
So this week I have Second Chance Romance by Olivia Dade. Cute. I found this one because it was a newer release by Olivia, and I really like her books. I believe I first found her during the pandemic. And I would say she's one of the queens of body positivity and having her heroines really look and represent the average woman in different sizes, which is just refreshing and wonderful to see. Yeah. And also a lot of the stories, she'll tackle topics like fat phobia, mental health issues, and then embracing real body types. I had read two of her other series, Spoiler Alert series, and there's something about Mayberg series. And so this one was the second half in the Harlot Bay series. And the first book is called At First Spite, and it was really good.
Cute.
Yeah, it's called a spite house. They're two tiny little like I forget what they're called.
Shotgun houses?
Yes, but it's so tiny that the original house was built next to the other one because it was like a divorce, I think. So they got that small bit of land and they like built right next to each other. So it's like forced proximity with the two. It's just very clever and fun.
That's cute.
So when I saw that this one came out recently, I was like, I needed to devour it immediately. I'm sorry, TBR, but I'm going to just go do this new shiny thing.
The TBR will survive.
The TBR will survive. I will always feed it and I will always go back to it so it never gets neglected. So here's the summary for this one. Carl and Molly were never together. There was a time right after high school where it seemed like they might finally cross the line from friends to lovers. But instead, a foolish misunderstanding meant they never spoke again. Molly went to LA and got married. Carl stayed in Harlot's Bay and bought a bakery. The only connection the pair has shared over the years is painfully one-sided. Now divorced, Molly narrates monster romance audiobooks, and Carl is an ever-diligent listener, clinging to his only piece of the one that got away.
Cute.
I know, he's yearning. Still, Molly hasn't totally left Harlot's Bay behind. When she hears that Carl's obituary has run in the local paper, unexpected grief prompts her to hop on the next flight to Maryland, where she finds Carl very much alive, the victim of nothing but an accidental obituary. As the pair reunite, they finally hash out their missed connection. True, Molly isn't quite ready to trust again, but Carl's determined to prove himself worthy of her faith and devotion. And as her remaining time in Harlot's Bay ticks down, Molly, the habitual cynic, just might find that Carl, the cranky town curmudgeon, is impossible to leave behind a second time.
I love it.
Yeah, so this
That's
is
so fun.
I think this is my second chance romance that I have reviewed on Book Nook, even though I've already told you guys it isn't always my favorite. I think it's very popular right now.
Yeah.
And so you guys know that like I have auto buy authors, and I love some authors enough that like even if it isn't like my most favorite trope, because I know and love them and are dedicated and loyal, I'm like, we're gonna give it a try.
We're gonna give it a go. Yeah.
And I just love her representation of all body types, and having characters that just feel really real and authentic. It's very relatable. It feels real. And then also to see that characters being bigger or fat isn't portrayed as a problem to be fixed or like part of their character art. It's like we all come in different shapes and sizes and different health issues. Like I just love that it isn't the problem, right? Or like the ugly duckling that then they have to like lose a bunch of weight.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's also what
it's
I really
not a
like.
problem to be solved.
Yeah, that's not a problem to be solved.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
we're bodies. It's all shapes and sizes.
We're
and
just a
everybody
bunch of
deserves love and
sacks of
happy
meat,
ending.
You know?
And also you can have spice. Like it's not only the skinnier people that can have sexy times, right? Like I think that's a lot what's portrayed in movies and marketing and just all over on social media sometimes. I think we're getting better, but I still think there's a lot to overcome there. And I really, in all of her books, I have loved that representation. Yeah. And another thing I like, these characters are older. I'm pretty sure they're around 38 because it starts with their 20th high school reunion is coming up.
Oh, I
so
love
again,
that.
A little more mature, a little older. Yeah. Again, nothing wrong with being 18 on the cusp of adulthood, but for a while that's like all we were seeing. It was like flooding the market.
Yeah.
And also like it's not a secret, Allie and I are in our 30s, so it's nice to we want to see representation of some like older stories too. And then this was really fun because both characters were a little bit grumpy, so it's a twist. Instead of being grumpy sunshine, it's like grumpy and how they like break each other's shells and that like that miscommunication missed trope. And then I also think that the past trauma of both of these characters that they carried is very relatable in that, twofold for each of them. One is I think something when it happens to you when you're younger, it can really stick with you, and then it can kind of grow and grow and grow. And if you kind of repress it, you don't even realize that you're kind of just in a repeat pattern. And then also if you're subjected to a certain type of behavior for a long time and over time, someone that you loved and trust, it can really erode your sense of worth or potentially quiet that inner voice that you maybe would have spoken up about, earlier on in the relationship, which I think, is also something that's very common that maybe not everybody talks about. Like relationships end, people get divorced, but then it's just like, you never always know the story why. So I liked that. And the spice was great. It was hot. Dade never usually disappoints in that department, and she didn't here as well. There's a hot scene in the bakery where he's kind of pushing her up against the wall, and that's all I'll say.
We love a wall push.
We love a wall push. So again,
we do.
Spice is for some people. It isn't for others. But if you like one that's a little more closed door, I would maybe pass on this one. But I would recommend it. It was really
yeah. No, that sounds great. Yay. Yeah. 2 good book nooks today.
We're just crushing it.
Yeah. So we're going to get into the meat of this episode. And, I think the question is a bit of an open-ended one, but I think it's one that a lot of people are thinking about. I think especially with some of the things that have been pointed out, like within the last, couple of years. And that is, do you need a platform to get published, like to get a trad pub deal, essentially? Well, Amber, I have a question for you.
Oh, goodness.
When you think of like, I know, okay, you're in the hot seat. Okay.
Deep breaths.
So when you think of like a writer, like a career novelist, What do you envision? Who is that person that you envision? What are they doing? What do they look like to you?
My gosh, immediately it's like movie picturesque. They're in their own solitary office. There's books everywhere, probably wood, mahogany, music, maybe even a fireplace, but like
Yeah.
solitary, right? Like they're very smart or introverted and they're able just to like write their prose, kind of like that stereotypical isolated doing their artwork, leave them alone. And then, voila, here comes the finished manuscript.
The next great American novel is born. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I feel like they're usually quoting Hemingway, about like, opening yourself over a keyboard and bleeding, essentially, and like
the tortured artist, author,
Yeah. But I think the imagery that you are talking about, like I also think about too, which is, in isolation, like you are the reclusive writer, the person that is in their ivory tower or in their room or in the library, just like not worrying about anything other than writing and like the craft. And I think that is an outdated stereotype because 100%. I think publishing very much expects you to like be online. I know that like being online up until recently like made me feel some type of way, not even necessarily in like the sense of publishing or whatever, but just like in general. And so I think that's what we're going to talk about today is sort of exploring some of the things that people that are industry experts have said, just some of the stuff that we've read and observed online, just kind of going over the general discourse. How does it make us feel? How do we feel like we can show up online? And just kind of trying to figure out like what feels good. Because at the end of the day, it's your life and you have to do it. And in general, there are no absolutes. But I think the conversation that we're going to have today, I think it's going to be really interesting because I think there's been a ton of change in the last 5 years even.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, I think too, like you said, nothing's absolute and every person is so different. Every story is so different. Also, everybody's expectations are different of what you want your writing journey to look like. Where do you want your book to go? So take that with a grain of salt as we're talking about this. Like Allie said, this is meant to just be, this is something that we've been consistently talking to each other about here and there as we read an article or we see something or we see someone online or even us as we created this podcast this year and are getting a little more active on our own platforms, like what that looks like and why we want it to look a certain way. So it's meant to just kind of be like, us book besties, let's talk the tea what's going on. So I do think publishing professionals, we can all agree, have been online for a while now. So it's not new. The interwebs aren't a new thing. Especially Twitter, we won't speak its new name like Voldemort, but it was home to many writers and agents and editors. There were a lot of competitions run by volunteers, like Pitman, rest in peace.
And like Pitch Wars. There's so many different ones.
So many good ones.
But and like that were like active and like successful and people were pitching.
And we even know authors that are traditionally published that found their writing cohorts via Twitter. Like we have found Smut You separately, but like found their like writing groups on Twitter. So it was definitely a place for community to market and to hopefully like do business in the publishing industry.
Yeah.
But I definitely think things changed a lot and got intertwined more with the pandemic and the surge of book talk, people being online more, and just TikTok in general. I can talk just from my perspective. I've been a lurker on book talk probably since like right around the pandemic. I almost didn't go on TikTok. Shout out to my really good friend, Kara. She was like, Amber, this is what the youngins are doing.
We love it.
It is true. She's like, you don't have to post anything. But part of it was selfish on her end in the best way. She's like, I want to send you these funny clips. Like, it's the pandemic. We are all surviving, doing our best. If you aren't in the bubble, you don't see people. So she wore me down. I'm like, okay, I'll create a TikTok account. But I had like my little picture and like that was it. Like I never posted anything. But as I learned TikTok more, I was following a lot of like book talkers, some authors, and just being a connoisseur of book talk.
Yeah.
Not myself thinking I was going to do a platform because that's really scary and putting yourself out there. So I think when we decided to do the podcast and knowing we were going to have to do, or we decided we were going to do social media, right? You can have the best product in the world, but if no one knows you exist, How are they going to consume what you're putting out there? So at least once in a group setting where we felt safe to like help push each other out into the social media universe, I at least felt not as hesitant, knowing that like we were trying to just be by like the bookish people. Like we're not for everybody, right? Like we are definitely a niche of a certain subsect of a conversation. And I really loved that part of book talk and being online. So at least I was knowing that it was trying to live in that section. So I wasn't as nervous about doing that. It was more the arduous task of like, we're elder millennials. How do we do this?
How do we do this? What do you feel like,
this?
as a person that's been like kind of lurking on Book Talk for like the last several years, what do you feel like makes it special compared to like Bookstagram, for example? Once you got there, once your friend enabled you and like gave you the heave ho into the water, what made you stay and like what did you like about it?
Yeah, so, and it doesn't mean any other platform isn't great, because they're just different and everybody perceives it differently. So for me, I liked the algorithm that like even before I was producing, I like would scroll and I'm like, oh my God, like when I would start liking things, you would get like so many similar or pretty immediately, or they would suggest other like people. Like it just worked really well. So it didn't take a lot of time and effort to have a curated for like all the things you're interested in. Like how great is that? Yeah, and so I didn't feel like I had to spend a lot of time like, who do I want to follow? Like you have to figure that out to then find them on some other platforms and then search them and know to follow them. Or at least maybe I'm just not as savvy on those other platforms, or I wasn't on early enough, right? There's been talk about the algorithms change, the platforms change, different entities, different businesses buy the platforms, and then things change. There's maybe more advertisements, more products being pushed. So like this is very generalized. But I just really found TikTok intuitive, easy, and like specialized very early on. So I was incentivized to go back when I wanted to escape, because like, let's be real, we were all like hunkering down in COVID and it was kind of a fun place. And I found a lot of my book recs there. Like instead of having to like only look in a bookstore and read all the back covers and or try to find a few reviewers online, or in Reddit's great, but like I easily then was following like maybe 15, 20 people that like I knew they liked the same books as me. So I was like listening with Britt. Oh, what has she been listening to lately? And I go and I like find her and I'd be like, done. It was like zero effort to then find a great book, because as a voracious reader, you kind of read a lot of books.
Your next fix.
Yeah, and your next mood read. So like that was so lovely for me. Like even my sister would always give me a hard time that whenever she'd find a book, she'd be like, you already read it. I'm like, Amanda, that came out like 3 years ago or whatever.
Okay, Amanda.
And I know,
Better
but she'd
late
also
than
love
never.
it because she would come to me and be like, I want a story that's this vibes in A, B, or C. And then I would just send her like 4 books she could choose from, because
I love it.
Yeah. So, and it was just, I don't know, a fun place to be. There wasn't too much negativity. Again, there can be in our community, right? There's always scandals, but I would say those are the rarity, not the norm.
Yeah. And I think, I'm very new to TikTok, like literally, the like November of 2025. Like,
Yay, girl, you still did it though.
Well, and the reason, like, because I mean, a bunch of my friends like got TikTok during the pandemic, and they're like, "You gotta do it." And I was definitely like I was definitely on like Bookstagram, and I loved that. And I had like a bookish account, like kind of like a lurking bookish account, on Instagram. But at that time, I was like, oh, good God, I already waste a ton of time on social media. I do not need another one that feels even more gamified and addictive. And TikTok very much does. Like, I get why it's super successful. Like, everything is gamified. You unlock new features by different engagement, different follower counts. Like, there's all sorts of stuff that just taps into that, like, dopamine
psyche
for sure. But I think in being in my short window of being on TikTok right now, because I was on Instagram combination of like my personal account versus, and then also like my sort of like bookish lurking one. I mean, I think I had Instagram like in 2012, 2011, like whenever it came out, and it has changed so much like since then. And I think I left it all like in January of 2025. Because it was just bumming me out. Like it was just not good for my mental health. And I will say the thing I think about TikTok, which can be, I can see how it could be bad, but it's really easy to like put the blinders on and just kind of stay in your niche. So if your
Mhm.
niche is problematic, then, it becomes a bad echo chamber.
Yeah.
But if you are, I think generally in like, what I find to be like a pretty productive and fun community, which is Book Talk, that's like a very like community oriented. I think that can certainly be a good thing. And I think it's really easy to kind of like filter out like a lot of the other stuff that's happening. So I think that's kind of unique about Book Talk, and just like the SEO, really. You're like, you type in, dark romance recommendation, and like, good God, are you going to get every possible recommendation that exists? So I think that's what makes it unique. And I think that's also what makes it very desirable for people in publishing, because it has the ability to capture a lot of attention. And then also, like I said, like the SEO stuff for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like a lot of this like being online discourse is everywhere. And there have been, a lot of, I think within the last year, a lot of discussion of platform, which I think is why we're having this conversation, because we started a podcast, and I think it's something to always, it's applicable, right? It wasn't
Mhm.
necessarily our intent. Like we were doing the podcast because we love the podcast, but it is also a platform, and it makes you think about like, what does that actually mean? And I think that I think the TLDR version is, and from what I've observed and read, I don't think that you have to necessarily have a platform to get a book deal. I think that we've seen a lot lately, people that have big followings getting book deals, whether they have or don't have a manuscript ready. And like those stories, much like the sort of like unicorns in publishing anyway, those ones tend to stick out. But in general, I think that like existing on the internet, like you said, is helpful in that, if people are looking for you, if they're looking for something and you don't exist, then like they can't buy what you're selling,
Yeah.
And you have to kind of exist for people to offer you opportunity, because they're looking for opportunity to give. So I think that's just something that I've been thinking of.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, it's hard when business and art are so close together, right?
For sure.
Because there's just a lot of emotional attachment in your creativity and
Competing
like,
interests too.
yeah, competing interests sometimes, right? Because business is like, they're in it for money, right? Like we all want money. So at the end of the day, publishing is a business. And so you always think of, Allie, we've talked about this before. Like I try to like compare it to, if you and I were writing almost the exact same book with similar tropes, and like it was going to do well in the projection of numbers, and it was a hot topic, but I have a platform and you don't. That's something extra easier that already exists. Like Amber has whatever amount of following we project that's going to help with these amount of sales. Who do you think the publisher is going to go with? No, that doesn't necessarily mean my book is better, or I'm a better writer, or that Allie's isn't deserving of a trad pub deal. That's just at the end of the day, they can get easier sales without putting more money and effort or marketing towards it. And I think that's just the reality. And it's not fair, right?
Right.
But business doesn't really care about being fair. It cares about money, and the less risk and the less they can spend to the more they make is what it's going to be. And, that we live in a capitalist country and society. And that may not always be great. I think Al and I would both agree that there's definitely negatives, there's positives, but at the end of the day, there is a good episode of The Shit No One Tells You About Writing that I think it's Cece in particular is talking about, that like, but this is the reality. Like, this is the industry. This is what it is today. And if you decide you want to participate, you kind of got to learn the rules, and you kind of got to play the game. Now, play your version and what you're comfortable with, right? It's not like you need to become a specific mold of someone you don't want to be. So again, if you really are like, I don't want to be on social media at all, you don't have to be. It just might be a little more difficult for you. Or maybe you have those industry connections, and that's something different too, right? Like business is business. And if you know people to get on top of the slush pile or get an agent sooner, you might even not need a platform. Again, that's maybe not fair, but that's just the reality of the system and the industry and the business. But I think most people who are maybe writing their debut novels or getting into writing don't have those industry connections, and probably are starting from scratch. And so a lot of people are online, and what that looks like it can be very advantageous for you if it's something you feel you can do and is okay for your mental health and all of the things that, Allie, you were hinting at. But at the end of the day, yeah, like it's a business. And then even too,
Yeah.
we talk about some of these bigger houses, like who owns them. I know, what wasn't it? Who did we just hear? Oh, Nisha Sharma had a
Nisha
post about,
Sharma, yeah.
I forget what house it is, was just bought out by private equity, you guys. And so again, there's positive, negatives, anything, but private equity a lot of times comes in to buy a business. Sometimes it's politically based, right? So hopefully that's not the case, that they're trying to suppress stories. This is the reality of what we live in the United States right now. People are
Yeah.
trying to ban books and suppress news and content.
Yeah.
Or they come in and buy a business for a couple of years, make cuts internally to save money to try to increase the revenue for a short amount of time, turn, sell the business at a higher profit, and then make those quick profit margins. So, but what that means for the inner workings of the company is a lot of times staff reductions. They're going to try to cut costs in ways they can. And she talks about too, like, okay, so now you're not going to have as much marketing budget, or maybe you're not even having dev editors anymore inside a traditional publishing house. Like, how crazy is that? And so then that even sets another conversation that is related to social media. Why would I want to do TradPub if I'm going there because they have the avenues, but more importantly, they have all the professionals. They're going to help me edit. You're going to help me sell the books, and you're going to help me get it in store. Well,
You're
now
gonna
you're
do my
not
cover,
doing.
you're gonna market.
Yeah.
Like that's the ideal that you're going into.
You have a very tiny like art department that's overworked, and you get no input on your cover, if any. And then you don't even have dev editors. And then some are buying their own private editors because it's their name attached to the work, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or secondly, too, like, you're supposed to provide the marketing. You have the big name, you have all the networks. That was traditionally what it was, right? Before there were platforms.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I was gonna what am I gonna do? Go to like the corner and wave my book, where
Yeah.
a big publisher has those avenues. So now you're not even doing marketing. Why am I going to you and sharing to you this big amount of profit when, if I'm going to have to do all the work anyways, why don't I do indie? Then I get to keep the product. Like, there's still going to be extra things I need to learn. But if I'm doing 75%, 100%,
Right.
I'm going to learn how to do that extra 25 or 30%.
Yeah.
And try to find my community online, build my book of business, build my platform, build my business reputation or your brand, and then sell your book and keep all the profits that way. So it's just very interesting how things are changing very quickly. Very quickly. It's nice that there's more options. I do have to say that. I love that there's indie publishing now. And so, like, we're getting more diverse voices. I think, avenues that were closed before, like you had to do TradPub and it had to be the big ones, or your book was never going to see the daylight. That's not the case anymore.
That's not the way it is anymore. No.
Which is so nice,
Which is so nice. And I think there is definitely stuff to be said too. And I'm not the most knowledgeable about it, but like, KDP is sort of like the exclusive thing for indie authors. And that is a system that a lot of people, I think, don't love, but like that is, again, sort of the way that it is.
Yeah.
But again, we're seeing, I think, more and more like TradPub authors that are going like hybrid, so they're like self-pubbing some stuff, and then they also have like their trad deals. And so they're trying to diversify and things like that. And I think, we also saw that with Adriana Herrera and Ali Hazelwood with their After the End Kickstarter that was essentially like they basically have an imprint like with like these novellas, and they were like, you guys said you didn't want this. Okay, well, we think that people do want this, and so like we're gonna do it. And like they fucking did.
They fucking nailed it. And again, it's a business. They decided this was too risky, whatever their metrics were, right? Numbers are only as good as the input and where you're getting them. So I'm sure whatever trad publishers, whomever declined it, didn't do it out of like spite or hatefulness. They just thought it was too risky, right?
It's calculated risk, and they're like, no, that doesn't work into our calculation. That's not what that trend is not trending enough,
right? But also, I'm sure there's speculation that they probably need to broaden that calculation, right? This narrow way that worked for the last 20 years isn't the case anymore. Again, diverse voices, diverse stories. But yeah, and then they're just like, we're going to do it. Like, okay, great. That's fine. It's just the different avenues, like you were saying. And then too, with the indie to trad pub, I think is really interesting. This is the lawyer in me, and this is just me speculating, but I think it would be really interesting.
We're speculating wildly today.
Wildly today.
Come along with us on this ride as we
But talking
Just
about just shoot the
engage in
shit.
conjecture of non-industry professionals, because we are not, but we're
Yeah,
learned ladies.
we're trying
and we
to
like
get there.
to
We're learning
observe.
ladies. We're getting there.
We're learned ladies. We're observing. We're taking in a bunch of different sources of information, and we're like letting it percolate. And this is kind of, we're having a live conversation about, the
Percolating.
vibes currently.
Is that so, talking about less risk, indie author has proven themselves a big number. So traditional publishing comes and is like, we can help you handle the distribution, some of that stuff, get you into more stores,
Yep.
the headache things. And so like we can do a hybrid or we can be trad pub now. But I think it would be interesting to see the difference between those contracts because I feel like the bargaining power has shifted, right?
Yeah.
A little bit
have,
that like
you have bargaining.
I don't need you. I think we could have a mutually beneficial relationship. I think you could help me grow and I could help you make money where you're not before. But also like I don't need you. So I don't necessarily need to acquiesce to maybe some terms that typically authors have to without having a big platform and already sales proven numbers. So I always just think that like I think it would be just so interesting to be able to be a fly on the wall to see like what some of these authors would be able to get, or they might all be different, right? And to be like, this is really important to me and this is a no-go. I know this isn't in a traditional contract, but like if you want me to come and trad publisher, this is the thing my client is going to want. And they can just continue doing what they're doing just fine or go somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting take too. Like some people are like, oh, they're selling out. I think it's just wanting to do well and make more money. Who doesn't want to do well and make?
Well, and I think there's like different, like, I think there's different goals that people have and goals change over time. What you had as your goal of like, I'm going to self-pub this book. And I just like want to get my story out there. I want to find my people. I want to connect with them. Like I want to put this out into the world. And that can like change over time. And like if you are achieving success and you're like, oh, I can make this work. And you do that for a certain period of time and you're doing it on your own. And then you're like, I really wish that I had more time to do XYZ. And I wish someone else was handling all of this other stuff. I think that's sort of the intersection of where they meet.
Totally.
I'll have to link it in the show note because, I read an article on Substack, and it was kind of basically talking about like the trends of publishing becoming more conservative in like more fiscally conservative. And like when you're talking about private equity, which is essentially like corporate rating, you're trying to like slim everything down, bare bones, limit choices, maximize profit, right? Minimize people.
Again, not always, but that tends to be what happens a lot.
It's not
right?
always,
like
but it tends to be the trend, right?
Yeah.
And so, you see that and you're like, okay, well, that makes a lot of sense if they are wanting to take on less risk because more risk means potential for less profit, that you would then be reaching out to indie authors. And similarly, agents are doing the same thing. They're like, hey, you are sort of blowing up and you have really good sales. I'd like to offer you representation. I liked your book, without actually going through like the query process, right? So I think there's a lot of things that are happening and some of the traditional pathway is like absolutely shifting. And I don't think that that's a bad thing at all. I want to be super clear about that. I think that as someone who's definitely on the outside, but looking in, that's wanting to, engage in this publishing activity at some point.
Some way, shape.
There is a lot of gatekeeping. There is a lot of, well, we have to follow these rules and like, you can't do this and you can't do that. And, this is the way. And like that sometimes like my little like rebel spirit sometimes in there is just like, does it have to be that way though? And so
burn, really?
Yeah, I'm like, I just feel like this is the way that it's been done and you don't think that it should change. And like sometimes it's designed to like keep certain people out. So I do like the, what feels a little bit more like the democratization of publishing. And I think that social media definitely plays a big role in this piece. You need to have a platform anyway. If you go trad, they want you to exist. They want you to engage. Bookends.
Weren't you just telling me, Allie, that like you had heard or read somewhere that even some trad pub contracts, initial ones, are having like social media clauses that like you need to have a certain, even if it's little, you have to do a certain amount of posts, how many weeks before or something like that, right?
Yeah, I heard that. I love Bookends Literary. They have James McGowan and Jessica Faust. They do such a good job. Like, again, not gatekeeping and like pulling back the curtain on like, especially like the agent side of publishing. And they have a YouTube channel. I think they're on TikTok now and like other social media, but like Bookends Literary, they're a literary agency and they talk about query letters, behind the scenes stuff, all of these different things that you're wondering about, you know, this other language that you're trying to learn. But yes, I did
Like us right now.
Like us right now, yeah. But they were talking about that they are seeing there is a trend that like publishers in their contracts are requiring authors to post on social media and shake it out there. It might be 4 or 5 posts like 2 or 3 weeks before release date. You know, it's nothing crazy. But I do think the fact that that is in the contract now versus like an unspoken / expectation versus now it's a contractual obligation. Like I do think that that tonal shift is important to note. And so I think if you're expected to do that, if you're going trad, and then also to like be indie, you definitely have to like be on social media because you're generating your own marketing and you're doing all of these things yourself. Like it kind of seems like it's this necessary thing for both avenues, really. And in fact, like being successful with like the indie side can ultimately like loop you back around, you know, to trad that we're like seeing more. And there's a bunch of authors, this is not an exclusive list, but like Olivia Rose Darling, like Ruby Dixon, Chloe Leese, BK Borison, Amy Dawes, Lindsay Straub, Hannah Grace, Hannah Bonham Young, Paula Lafferty, Elena Armas, I think also had self-pubbed initially. So like there's like a ton of that. And the caveat I think to this is also an interesting perspective. I also follow Kathleen Schmidt. She is like a PR professional. She has a newsletter called Publishing Confidential on Substack, and it is such a wealth of information. But the other piece of this conversation, I think, when we're talking about platform and like kind of specifically social media, because that is the easy way that we as randos on the internet can access
What was I just talking about? Being a lurker.
Like, yeah, we're just like, we're randos. We don't really have credentials that would, you know, get us on GMA, right? But I think the other thing that she's talking about, Kathleen Schmidt, is she's like, you know, we also need to take into account, and particularly publishers and like marketing departments, is that there is a decline in opportunity for legacy media to like spotlight, you know, authors and things like that. So there tends to be like a more of a reliance then on the author's platform themselves, because these GMA spots are limited. Are they actually selling books? You know, we've seen the cuts to NPR. We also have seen the AP book reviews that were like syndicated essentially and like could be in, you know, distributed in like smaller markets and stuff. They've done away with that too. So it kind of is putting this significant emphasis, or at least it feels like that, on the author's own social media. And I don't necessarily think that's right, because I think that, again, like what you were saying, Amber, and like what, you know, Nisha had been talking about in her video the other day on TikTok, but like, then what are you doing, trad? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
and I
even though it's based off a necessity, we hear you.
Yeah.
But then you're still getting the same profit margins.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, as when you really were doing a lot more of these other things. So like, you know, that's a fair question to ask. And it's hard, like you said, we haven't seen the exact profit margins from then and now. It would be interesting
we don't know.
as an insider to be able to like do this analysis and stuff. But like people are feeling it, right? There's a reason people are having this conversation, because these things are ringing true in practice.
I think the third rail of a lot of this conversation is the psychologic principle of social proof. If you have this audience that is loyal and engaged, like we want you to be in our stable of authors because we know you can sell books. If you have engagement and a following, and if you're selling books, then like agents want to work with you because they you know, you have a proven track record. And like social proof is just like basically the underpinning of this entire industry. Like there is a scarcity sort of mindset of like, ooh, I want the new shiny object. I want the new shiny manuscript that's going to be, you know, a mega blockbuster. Everyone's always in search of that. And I think we see it too when people are talking about querying agents. Like you get your one, you know, sort of phone call or like offer of rep, and then you sort of nudge all these other people, and then, you know, they start popping like popcorn. They've been radio silence, and then it's like, ooh, somebody else is interested in this. I better get in on this because like somebody else has said that they want this. So like
I better take a second look
too. Yeah. And that's that social proof. Like nobody wants to be the one to like take this risk. I mean, maybe some people do, but in general, you get more success or more attention or whatever with following the principle of social proof. Like I said, I think that's the thing that underpins this whole thing. It's with social media, it's with traditional publishing, it's with indie publishing, you know, it's with querying agents. Like who has said yes? And then it becomes a chicken or the egg thing where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, how do I get someone to say yes? And like, again, then it's like, well, I have to exist for someone to say yes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have to
100%.
exist on the internet.
The scary interwebs, folks. The scary
interwebs.
internet. The interwebs.
The interwebs.
This all sounds great, Amber and Allie, in theory, but as an individual who's like feeling overwhelmed and also doesn't want to be on the internet or doesn't want to be perceived or being vulnerable, like we want to tell you that like we see you and we know that that isn't an easy thing to do. And so we can only speak from our experience that I think we fought it for a while. And I don't think we fought it as in we didn't think we weren't going to get a platform. It was more of a like, that's Amber's problem tomorrow or Amber's problem next week. Or like, I haven't even finished my book yet. Like, I don't need to be on social media or I don't need to do that yet. Because again, it was, how do I even show up? Do I be myself? What does that look like? I don't want to be vulnerable, or I also don't want to seem like I'm like, hi, I'm Amber, be my friend, buy my book. Hi, I'm Amber, be my friend and buy my book, right?
Yeah.
Like
I'm
constantly
asking a lot of you and I'm a stranger. Yeah.
Yeah, and like or constantly like doorman selling, right? Like that's just
Yeah.
not my personal vibe. It makes me cringe. So like initially
Me too.
knowing that I was just gonna have to go on the internet and be like, buy my book, buy my book. I didn't love that, but also understood that like what we just broke down, right? There's ways to do it that seem authentic to you. It's kind of part of the game. Also, it is a way that can really help you be successful without a lot of money. It's definitely a lot of time put into like building your platform and creating these posts.
I think making a decision to be on social media, I think you kind of need to think about what are you wanting to get out of it. And I think the easiest thing to be in pursuit of, and the thing I think that for me, and this is my biased opinion, the thing that feels good is actually like looking for community, looking for bookish besties, looking for people that like their vibe and you have similar taste in books, and that exchange, that feels good. And that feels like the magic and the power of the internet used for good to connect people that wouldn't necessarily connect across the world, right? And like that are, I know, yes, because we do not live in the same place. Yeah. So I think that going into it with that expectation versus like sort of the unrealistic, I think, expectation of being like, I'm going to go viral.
Yeah.
I'm going to go viral. And from that, all things are going to come. And like, that's just not realistic.
And you know what my biggest hurdle was now that we're talking about it, Allie? I think just a little bit of the technology. Like I see these really cool videos, but I'm like, how do you even make a video? Like I don't have editing software. Like how do you do that? So that was the first thing. Like if I knew how to do all these things, and that's just kind of takes time and practice and just, faking it till you make it. But the second thing I think was that I was trying to be so perfect. Like, oh my gosh, I'm going to post this. Like, what am I going to say? What exactly is it going to look like? Am I going to look good? What is the background? Like trying to make sure every little thing is absolutely perfect, and overthinking as in like, spoiler alert, I'm a recovering perfectionist, so we've been working on it.
What? No, that's crazy.
Never.
I would never think
But
of it.
I think now that I'm, a few months into I've been really like diving in hard, like trying to like, we're just going to figure it out by trial, but thank you. Like trial by fire, we're going to figure it out. And if we fall down a couple times, that's fine, whatever. I'm going to not do that the same next time, and I'm going to keep going. But I think it's to just like make content that you think is enjoyable or that you like, and start there. Because then like if you're enjoying it and it doesn't feel as such a burden, at least that gets you started, that gets you online, that like if you're spending a whole week to make one post and you don't really like it and then it gets 0 views, like you're not going to continue. Like that is a lot of time and effort and worrying, and eventually maybe we'll get on trends or try to do things and like tailor what we think is funny to add in a little of that other stuff to try to increase your numbers. But at the end of the day, it was like, stop worrying about it being perfect in posts and responses. Like just get in people's comments. If it's funny, like let them know. Like I appreciate that when someone's like, Amber, I'm dying. I'm like, oh my God, thank you for seeing me and my humor.
Thank you for saying that I'm funny.
So again, and we are not experts by any means, but we just wanted to share this little piece because we felt overwhelmed that we saw a lot of either like really established platforms that are fucking killing it, or like professionals. There wasn't a lot of like here's how you start. Here's what the growth looks like. How does that feel? And we thought, even if just a couple of you find this helpful, we hope it does. But like to kind of see it from the beginning as someone who like, we are not social media experts. We do not have degrees in this. We are novices. We are ladies on the internet.
Yeah.
But learned ladies and trying to figure it out too. And finding some success, which is really exciting to like,
Yeah.
get our stuff out there.
And I think, to summarize this sort of meandering, the conversation, I think that, in what we've observed and learned, I think that you do have to exist on the internet in some way. And
Yeah.
I think that it just simply comes down to people can't find you to give you opportunity if you don't exist. And I don't think that that just applies to publishing. Like, I think that that could apply to a personal brand. Like, that could apply to any other
selling
business.
widgets on the internet, right? Like,
Yeah,
they can't find your widget, they ain't gonna buy it.
That's right. If you like, I think that that's sort of the expectation now, right? And so I think putting yourself out there feels really scary. And like for me, I personally, was not really excited about being perceived. And like I actually, like I said, completely gotten rid of like everything except for Substack in January. And then, when we decided to do the podcast, I was like, well,
Allie, do you remember what you said when we were trying to figure it out? Because it was me, Allie, and Marie. Neither of us are really big on social media and or have backgrounds.
None of us
and we
are.
were like,
I mean, we're just a bunch of randos.
And we were dividing tasks, and it took Allie and Marie. Like, I hadn't even taken a breath. And what did you do? You remember what you said? I think you were just like, yeah, no. I think it was just like a one word full sentence.
I was like, absolutely not. Like, I don't know. And I think that I still do.
But I knew the reasoning behind it, like your mental health, and you needed a break. So it wasn't like you weren't trying to be a team player. So I just want to put that out there. So like, I just remember being like, yep, we're all going to have to be uncomfortable and learn new skill sets. And it looks like by default, this is where you're landing, Amber. Fucking buckle up, put on your big girl panties.
I was like, I'll edit the podcast.
We got to go.
Figure that shit out. Yeah.
You're taking on the bulk of editing the podcast. And that's been a pain too. So like, there's been tasks all around.
Yeah. And so I think you need to exist. And I think that that is ultimately what I came around to. And I think the way that I'm engaging with social media right now is I'm just putting stuff on the internet that like I have a fun time talking about or I have a fun time making. And I'm not really worried about literally anything else.
And it shows, Allie. It shows.
Yeah. And I think it's also easier to with a group. Like the fact that we launched the podcast first before I made my TikTok account, having that and sort of knowing, even though I wasn't there observing, and it was like, okay, my face has been on the internet now for
Amber's been
weeks.
Putting my face all over the internet.
My face
already.
has been all over town. So it felt sort of like, well, what do I have to lose now? Because my face is out there. So that is definitely something to play into it. And like I said, have not very much still in the process of like working on our projects. We are not in any more advanced stages as far as this whole publishing thing. We would like to be at some point, but I think we're pretty good at like researching and observing and kind of letting everything marinate and kind of using that to like inform decisions. And I think there's a lot of really interesting things that have been happening, especially in the last 5 years. I think Book Talk kind of shook a lot of things up. And I think we're going to continue to see change. And there's some really good people out there that are industry professionals that I think give really good advice and really good insight. And like we mentioned them before, Kathleen Schmidt, she's like marketing and publicity. She is publishing Confidential on Substack. There is also, like I said, Bookends Literary, which is Jessica Fast and James McGowan. And I love their YouTube channel. They have so many videos on just like any part of the kind of querying agent stuff that you would ever want to know. And I think, that's really helpful. The shit no one tells you about writing. They're also industry professionals and they have such good advice. That's a really great resource. Anybody, I'm sure there's a bunch of people that I'm forgetting.
Yeah,
but I feel like those are
we list the ones we referenced in this podcast. But I also think just to end the craft corner segment, I think the hopeful part at the end of all this is that more options is better than less. And so there's also lots of information out there that it still may seem overwhelming and have to do your homework. So that definitely is a lift, right? That's a mental load and we hear and see that. But at the end of the day, like, you have options to do what's best for you. Like, what do you want to do? What is your goal? What do you want that to look like? No one book, no one person, no one agent, no publisher is exactly the same. So, you don't need to feel the pressure of like, oh my God, now I have to completely make a social media platform and go viral in order to get trad pub. That's not
That's not
necessarily
what we're
the
saying
case.
at all. And that's not
No.
true. You do
Oh,
not
and it's
have
not.
to.
And
You
it
do
might
not have
increase
to
your
have a
odds.
platform to get a
Right.
publishing deal. You don't.
No, you don't. It might increase your odds. It may
Yeah.
not, depending what it looks like. But it's nice that there is these places where you can go to not pay money and basically get a whole audience. Like in the very beginning, Allie, do you remember when I told you this, where I was like, oh my gosh, we got like 70 likes on something, which seems like, but imagine if we were in a room with that, like we did an event and 70 people showed up without having to pay to put anything in the paper or like old school
That's
posters.
crazy.
Like how cool and awesome is that? So I think just, hopefully this discussion was helpful for you. You can think on it. And if you will decide if and when it's ready for you. And there's many reasons why or why not to be online and have a platform to kind of help build your brand or sell your book or get an agent or get published. And it's just interesting as things change and develop. So
yeah,
here we are.
if all you walk away with is like cool people on the internet that like the same shit that you like, I mean, that's also
a win.
That's
also
a
big fucking win.
Yeah, that's also a win. And so I think reframing it like and thinking about that and being more about connection, because connection, I think, is something that you can control also. And so I think starting social media and being like, oh, I have to have a platform to get a book deal. I have to, get all these followers to get a book deal. And it's like, maybe don't focus on that because like a lot of that, you've taken so much control away from you when you're talking about that goal. But I think if you're making the goal of being like, I just want to exist, I want to connect with people and like I want to find my people, I think that you can find social media can be absolutely rewarding and a good thing. And I think that's a good energy to go into it with of like, I just want to find my people that like the same stuff that I do and that get super hyped about my dumb memes that I make about reading and writing.
Exactly. That is best. Those are the best vibes to end on. I couldn't have said it better. So now we're going to do as we always do. We all deserve a happy ending. I can get us started, Allie, if you'd like.
Let's do it.
After this week, we have had, like, if you follow us at all, we've made a few posts that, like, we have had. Oh my God. Allie was finishing her 3rd week of working in a row. We were having tech issues. I was having them with work. And we were editing the podcast. My son tested positive for the flu and he was really down and out for a whole week. Like everything was just in such disarray and not scheduled and exhausting. I don't know another word for it besides just exhausting. I promise my happy ending is coming. This is the setup. But we are finally, Lachlan is back at school. We are feeling better. We're getting on a new trajectory. I'm just thankful to all the healthcare professionals. I'm looking at you, Allie, that when Lachlan got like his fever spiked really high and he was so lethargic, like when Lachlan gets sick, that's a trigger for me because I'm not healthcare and Patrick's gone. I just freak out like what I should do. And so like being able to just have an urgent care to go to and have someone look at him and be like, yep, let's keep him for an hour or two. Let's look at him, do the things. He's doing so much better. And I'm just thankful that like, hopefully the tech issues are behind us. He's doing better. And you healthcare professionals are just true heroes doing, literally saving lives every day. So,
well, thank you. I'm glad he's feeling better. And I'm glad that you are able to get him back to school and start doing the stuff that you need to do.
Okay. He and I think we're both, even though he was still
too.
sick, it was like cabin fever and it's been really cold here in Minnesota. It's like it's the flu and it's really cold and I work from home. So like we aren't leaving and doing much, but also he was kind of just like a wild man running around in his undies. I'm like, we got to get you back.
What are we doing? Yeah.
We need to schedule again.
What are we doing, bud? Yeah. I am feeling super grateful for my parents. They've been so helpful in like this crazy like work time. And like when I'm going to Oxford next month, Daniel is actually going to be on, he's going to be on like an away rotation essentially. So she's going to be staying here with the Scooty Booty while, while I'm in England. So she's gonna be staying at the house and like dog sitting for us, which is really helpful. And just with my work schedule lately, I've just been very appreciative. Like Daniel's had some like really busy calls and has gotten home late, and then I've been working, and so just having the help to like help with the dog, because the other thing about my dog, you guys, is he's a diabetic. So
Poor
he needs
Scoot.
insulin. He needs insulin twice a day, and so it's not just we need someone to like throw kibble in a bowl and like let him out potty. Like we check his sugars twice a day. We have to figure out what insulin dose to give him, and like all that stuff. So he's a little bit more high maintenance than like a regular creature, but I'm just feeling very appreciative to my parents who, my mom has helped with like stuff around the house, and my parents have helped with the dog a lot the last couple of weeks while we've been super busy. So I very much appreciate them.
Yay, Mom and Dad.
Hey, Mom and Dad.
Thank you for helping us just survive. And that's
Yes.
so sweet and lovely.
Yes,
and leaning into
we
your
love
support
you.
network when you need it, right? Like
When you need, yeah.
that's why they're there.
So very helpful. So thank you guys for joining us on this sort of,
Wild
vibes-based,
journey.
meandering conversation of, what even is publishing? What even do you need? And
Who are we? Where are we?
who are we? Where are we? What's going on? But we really appreciate, finding you guys and talking to you guys in the comments. And we would love, love, love if you could rate, review, subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. It really does help us find more like-minded people. And like we said, we're going into this really looking for community. And so we're really excited for how many of you guys have already shown up. And we are hoping to have internet friendships and, maybe make those IRL one day. And so you can also follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and then also YouTube on Smut and Sensibility Pod. We're also on Blue Sky at smutandsensibility.bsky.social. And then also we do have a Substack. And I hope that you guys stay safe and most importantly, stay smutty and go forth in pursuit of your happily ever after. Bye.
Bye.